All right, welcome into today's edition of GC Live Sunday Reset with your host, yours truly, Jack Veltri. Just got back from Tuscaloosa a short while ago, probably about an hour ago, to be honest. Running on fumes at this point. I left Tuscaloosa, or I was staying outside Tuscaloosa, but left probably around like 6:30 Central Time this morning. So it was an early morning for me on the road, driving all day. But you know what? We're here now. We're here to talk some Gamecock football. And yeah, so in case you missed it yesterday, South Carolina, which I know most of you didn't miss it, South Carolina suffered a real gut wrenching 27-25 loss to number 7 Alabama. Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa, I was on hand for the game. And look, it was like I said before, gut wrenching, heartbreaking, just a real tough pill to swallow that you lost that game. And I think it's arguably a game that South Carolina really should have won. I've kind of gone back and forth on it. I feel like it's not so much that Alabama beat South Carolina. I mean, yeah, they got the win, but I feel like it's more so South Carolina just beat themselves. Again, it's just mistakes after mistakes after mistakes, and that is ultimately what hurts this team so much. Is that like the LSU game, for instance. I know we don't like talking about that, but the penalties killed South Carolina in that game. Right, wrong, whatever the penalty, like 13 is too many, even with the ones that were questionable. That was way too many. And then yesterday, we'll get into it throughout the show over the next hour, but the turnovers, like the mistakes on that end, the not making the right reads or whatever the case might be, just mistakes in that game really killed South Carolina. And yeah, I'll be joined by a good friend from 107.5 The Game, Elijah Campbell, here at 3:15, and we'll be talking all things about this game. And appreciate you guys all tuning in. Mark, appreciate you. What's up, Jack? Thank you for your dedication, bro. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, like I said before, just got back from. It's kind of been like all hands on deck for me today, like getting up early, driving around from Tuscaloosa, and then coming straight home, ate lunch, set up everything for the show, and we're here now talking about it. Then it's Beamer Teleconference at 5, and then we have a baseball scrimmage tonight at 7:30 at Founders Park. So I'll be over there for that. And I'll be providing live updates and then have my observation story shortly thereafter things wrap up. So it's a 4-inning scrimmage today, but nevertheless, the job continues, and we're gonna be rocking and rolling. Travis, appreciate you tuning in as always. What's up, GC Live fan? What's up, Travis? Thank you again for being a regular listener to the show. So before we really start diving into everything, and then Elijah will be joining us here in a few minutes, I want to talk to you guys about our main sponsor of the day, right above me here, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you are looking to, if this is the time where you're looking to buy a home or you're interested in kind of getting that process going and you need help with it and you don't know where to start, you can go ahead and give our guy Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans a call. He's been in the mortgage industry since 2003. He's been a lifelong Gamecock fan, and he is a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central, a regular sponsor for as long as I can remember, probably even dating back to when I started at Gamecock Central. Of all these Gamecock Central live shows. So really appreciate Clint for all his support over the years. If you're interested in starting that process of trying to buy a home or a mortgage or whatever the case might be, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597. Or you can go to clinthammond.com to get that process going. And once again, want to thank Mr. Clint Hammond for all his support over the years. So getting into some of the comments here, Travis says, Jack, if I send a super chat, would you please ask Beamer Loggins my question about Huddle? Yeah, what was the question you had about the Huddle, Travis? If you don't mind commenting it here. Apologies if I missed it somewhere on like one of the recent shows or something, or I just haven't seen it yet. Again, I haven't even gotten to go back and watch through the game film yet, honestly, which I plan to do tomorrow because obviously I'll have my grading the Gamecocks story out and stuff. But I definitely want to see this game with my own eyes again and see what happened from a TV standpoint and from the form. Yeah, I'll check it out and see if I can find it. But look, there's a lot of. I think the one thing I'll say right off the bat is that I think the coaching was much better yesterday. Like it's hard not to be worse than what happened against Ole Miss because you made so many bad decisions in that game, and your offense stunk. Your defense was pretty good, but again, it wasn't perfect. It was just a lot of issues in that Ole Miss game, and South Carolina went out here and look. No, there are no moral victories. Let's just put that out there. There are no moral victories in the SEC. So yeah, South Carolina lost. That's really what matters. But I thought overall the product on the field yesterday looked so much better than what happened a week ago. Like it's so clearly obvious how much better they played, and it was just the defense was really good in this game. And again, we'll talk about them here shortly when Elijah joins. I thought the offense had some moments at times where things were a little rough, but I thought at other times things were really clicking. I mean, they went on a 19-0 run at one point, and so I thought there was a lot of good from yesterday. But I think the big thing that I've kind of just learned, I think a lot of people could probably agree on this, with South Carolina is just I don't even know if this will make sense, but I've just been thinking about it. I think they are like the most consistent at being inconsistent, right? And what I mean by that is South Carolina just, for whatever reason, when the lights are really shining on them, they just can't come through. And when they get something good going, they can't build off on it, at least recently. I just think South Carolina has a lot of work to do to still get to where it wants to go. I mean, look, the start to the season was great. You've been struggling a little bit the last few weeks. The losses have kind of compounded, losing 3 of the last 4. But overall, I do feel better about this team after yesterday. It's just the point is, who knows what you're going to get on a week-to-week basis. You might get South Carolina going into Norman, Oklahoma next week and blowing out Oklahoma. That wouldn't shock me. You might also see South Carolina just go out there and score 3 points again like it did against Ole Miss. Who knows? That's kind of what this football team is. And look, there's still a lot of work to do, but finding consistency is probably number one. And joining me to kind of talk about everything from this game is good friend Elijah Campbell from 107.5 Game. Elijah, how we doing, buddy?
What's up? How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just got back from Tuscaloosa. I know you were planning on going, but how's everything going? What's been going on, man?
Yeah, car troubles. I think everybody can relate to that. Not a fan of, but it didn't get to enjoy watching, that game, and it was so much more compelling than really I think anybody kind of anticipated. Right? I mean, that was a phenomenal football game, and it was one when it got to 14-0. I think me and anybody else that's watched this team this year kind of got that feeling of, oh, here we go again, and they try. Look, to the offense's credit, they completely turned it around. And I think I left that game with more questions than answers on what we can actually expect from this team on a game-to-game basis because, look, that offense could not have looked more putrid than it did against Ole Miss. It could not have looked more putrid than it did in that first, drive of the game against Alabama. And then all of a sudden, they figure it out. It looks like they figured out a little bit. They're able to put some drives together. And then all of a sudden, you're up 19-14 in the fourth quarter against Alabama. The defense is really the only consistent part of this team this year. And I think going through another rewatch of this game and try to look at as many angles as possible, it's going to be fascinating to see exactly what this offense has changed, from last week to this week. I do think they've simplified it. I think they've gotten a little more creative with how they're getting the ball in space to their playmakers. But my initial reaction watching that was, do we really know anything about this football team? Because when you think you do, they turn around and do the exact opposite. This might be one of the hardest teams to pinpoint in the entire Southeastern Conference.
And like I said, man, it wouldn't shock anyone if they went out here and just played a really good game again against Oklahoma next week, who is in their own way struggling just as much as South Carolina is at times. Like they have a lot of the same issues. Defense is pretty good. The offense has a lot of room, to grow. And I think it wouldn't also shock me if South Carolina went out here and laid an egg next week and just didn't come up to, didn't show up. Like it wouldn't shock me. And that's the toughest thing to get about this team is that to understand about them is you watch enough Carolina football by now. They really haven't had like that breakthrough moment. I feel like in Shane Beamer's 4 years. Now, before anyone overreacts, what I mean is like, yeah, they had the big wins here and there, but they've never been able to like take that next step forward, right? Like when they won 8 games in 2022, they won 5 games the next year. So I think like normally a team would go, 9 wins the next year after that. Like the momentum would be building. Instead, you took a step back, you're trying to take another step forward now, and it's kind of just that, like, the ups and downs of a college football season. And it's it can be tough to watch at times, this team, but after a game like yesterday, it's like you remember they can really go out there and potentially beat anyone, and they gave Alabama a legitimate scare yesterday. And I think at the front end of giving Alabama a scare, and we'll get into the good and bad of what Lenore Sellers did, but I think we have to start with him in this conversation, and we'll start with the good. I thought for the most part he looked night and day better throwing the football yesterday. I mean, he was hitting. I got to go back and watch the replay, but like from what I saw live in person, he was throwing into some really tight windows, making some great passes. And like William Jones says, we'll get into the Nick Harbor conversation. That pass to Harbor was great. And I totally agree. That was probably like one of Sellers' best throws. Just great all-around play right there. The great catch to keep the toe in bounds and the great throw. But overall, for the most part, yeah, there were some bad plays at times by Sellers, maybe throwing the football a little bit. But, like, he wasn't completely whiffing on a ton of throws, if that makes sense. He was connected, and he looked very sharp yesterday, and he gave South Carolina a chance to win that football game. What say you?
Yeah, I think he looked more comfortable. Because there are times this year where Lenoris gets set back there to pass, and I think he's either seeing ghosts because he normally doesn't have a lot of time to let a lot of plays develop, or he goes to using his legs and scrambling, which makes him a weapon. And sometimes he can lean on that maybe a little too much, but I thought he did a really good job of balancing, hanging in the pocket, making some good throws, running when he needed to. I love the little pump fake he started using yesterday whenever he'd get outside the pocket and kind of getting linebackers to jump, and you earn extra yards that way. And I think that's a really good way for him to make himself a weapon. Even if the passing game isn't 100% clicking, even just the threat of doing it separates you a little bit. From a pocket passing standpoint, I thought he was better. There were some throws he'd like to have back, when I'm saying within the pocket, not talking about the 2-point conversion. That one, I'm sure we'll get to, was really the most disappointing play of the game. But I thought when he was in the pocket, when he stepped back and had to make a throw, especially late on 3rd and 4th downs, I think he did a lot better. The pass to Mazio to begin to get the first score of the game. I mean, Mazio was wide open, but he made the pass. Like, that's the thing. There are a lot of quarterbacks in college football. Even watching games last night, man, some older quarterbacks who are having players open down the field and still missing them, right? You at least make those layups right there. I think Lenoris made the layups for the most part a lot better yesterday, and I thought his competency was able to make the offense a whole lot better. Look, you outgained Alabama on a per play basis, right, by maybe like 1/10 of a yard, but still, I mean, your offense was good enough to win that game, which is not a sentence I was ever anticipating saying at all after what we saw at Williams-Brice last Saturday night. But the thing with Lenoris too, man, you can see there's growth, because you see some confidence in throws. When he throws with conviction, he's got arm talent, but he doesn't always throw with conviction, right? No. I think there's some second guessing, which is where maybe simplifying a playbook, maybe giving him just one read and go might be what benefits him in the here and now. But towards the long run, you're going to have to be able to process the field a whole lot better and do so confidently. And I understand that's an incredibly difficult thing for somebody in their first year of starting quarterbacking in the SEC to be able to do. But when you saw him fixate on a read, make a decision, and make a throw, he looked a whole lot better than he has at really any point this year. And then in terms of just the bad, look, there are some plays that in the game, your quarterback's got to make when it's, 2-point conversion, ball on the 2-yard line, and Dre Jacobs is running in the corner of the end zone. I know it's tough given the moment and given everything, but you got to make that throw. You have to make that throw. And that's one thing I think he's going to be watching. And if you want to, do some teach tape or show tape, whatever Dal wants to call it for Lenoris going into the future, you're going to show him that play and say, look, you are very close to beating a team like Alabama. We need you to be able to make these throws. This is the next step, is making those throws. And that's ultimately, once he's able to start making more across the field and he's less limited, then the offense will be able to open up too. But I think the receivers also helped him out. And for the most part, minus the Gage Larvading drop, I guess, earlier on, and that was in the second quarter, where Lenoris made that incredible Superman play to get out of the pocket. Usually, I think 3 weeks ago, that's probably a sack, right?
Probably.
But he got hit in the backfield, was able to use his offhand to push him up, roll out, find Larvadan. Pass was a smidge high, sure, but you'd like to see Larvadain pull that down. But for the most part, I think the wide receivers did a little better job of getting open, of being able to find softer spots and zone coverages and help them out. I think symbiotically it all helped. It all looked a whole lot better than we've really seen it this year. But part of that is some of the growth that Lenoris has made.
Yeah, let's start diving a little bit into, because look, there was a lot of good in this game. Like we'll get back to talking about the final minutes of this game because we have to talk about that. That was absolutely insane. But there were times in this game, as you referenced, Elijah, that South Carolina offensively, especially with Sellers, just looked like they're still growing pains. Like the throw to Larvadain, I think that's more on Gage for not catching that pass. That was a great job by Sellers to break out of the pocket there and out of trouble and make a really good throw on the run. The ball, I think, was placed just about as good as it could have been.
Yeah.
What'd you say? It was a smidge too high?
A smidge. Maybe if you bring that down a little bit, you hit him in stride. And instead of having to make that jump, then he's catching it in stride. And he's maybe going the distance, right? It could have been a little lower, but I think at the end of the day, if it hits your hands, I know the sun's in his eyes and all that stuff, but if it's in your hands, you got to corral it. And I think he got close enough to his hands to where, you were brought to South Carolina to make that catch.
Exactly. And he had been playing so well over the last few weeks, Gage Larvadain. And look, I think he probably would have scored on that. If not, he probably would have been pushed out of bounds right then and there. But after that, look, Sellers with the fumbles. That was I think he had 3 fumbles in the game, but 2 of them were lost.
Yeah.
So the second quarter one, I'm going back and watching the little bit of the highlights on it. And, look, I was still puzzled by it yesterday, and I'm still puzzled by it now. He was getting brought down to the ground, and his ball placement is kind of weird. He's not tucked. He doesn't have it tucked. He's trying to throw it, but he has it up in the air, and he's spinning around, and he just tries throwing it away. I never thought that was going to be successful to begin with. Worst case, that ball's getting picked off and being taken the other way, and you're putting the ball in harm's way, and that's a real issue for me. That ended up in a fumble recovered by Alabama, of course. Then in the fourth quarter, right after your defense gets the pick in the end zone by Odie Fortune, we'll talk a lot about this defense later because there was a lot to be.
It was brilliant.
Yeah. There was a lot to be excited about with this defense. Right after that, literally, I think when I was going through the 5 most pivotal plays from this game, this ended up being the final one I talked about. 6 seconds after that, an awesome turnover. You give the ball right back to Alabama in Carolina territory. You fumbled it you faked the handoff to Rocket Sanders, and you tried pulling it, but you lost the ball, and that's a real issue for me. And it's not just this game, man. It's ball security all year long has been a problem for him. You go back to the LSU game, I think it was Old Dominion as well. He's got 9 fumbles this year. Luckily, only 3 of them have been recovered by the other team. But a game like yesterday, Alabama recovered 2 of them. And that is a big issue, considering in the fourth quarter, Alabama scored a few plays later, right after that fumble, just after Jalen Milroe threw his second pick of the game. So, look, the weird thing is Sellers gave you a chance to win this game. Mm-hmm. But in hindsight, he also kind of lost you this game. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of overreaction out there to I've seen people say Sellers isn't the guy, the Sellers experiment is over and stuff. I full-handedly disagree with that. It's 6 games. Is he where you want him to be? Probably not to the full extent of what we expected out of him. But at the same time, it's it's going to take time to look at Nico from Tennessee.
Yeah.
Look, he's got his growing pains.
He was bad. He's been bad the last 2 games. Straight up. The guys, him and Lenora Sellers, really they both laid an egg the previous week. And last night against Florida, that was about as bad a quarterbacking game as you could have. You could argue that he lost in the Arkansas game. And last night in Neyland against Florida, he should have lost in that game against Florida. The defense bailed him out. So, really, a lot of these talented guys that you see across the country that are 5-star coming out of high school, there's some things that you have to learn that's different from the high school game to the college game. And, eventually you're not just going to get by because you are built like a linebacker and have a strong arm. Because you know what? defenses you play now are all built like linebackers and have strong arms in the SEC. They're all every bit as athletic as you are. Instead of one or two guys, like think about it. Like, and my dad used to tell me this all the time when it comes to like college players in the NFL. But if you're someone like Lenore Sellers and you're playing at South Florence and you're a 4A high school powerhouse, you may be facing one or two Division I defensive players across the side of the ball from you every single game. One or two. And the teams that have two of those are normally the best teams in the state, right? Sometimes you play a Dutch fork and there's like four, right? But there's not all 11. Then you go to college and then you start. You're a starter and you're playing in these big-time games. And all 11 of those guys are every good as the two that you'd play on a Friday-to-Friday basis. That's how, like, when you put it in perspective like that, that's how big a jump it is. And I don't care how good you are. Not everybody is going to be coming in at age 18 and lighting it up. As a matter of fact, it's really rare. And sometimes when they light up to begin the season, they'll slow down because then they'll never have anybody at the high school level watch tape on them the way college coaches watch tape on you and are able to scheme around you. And you see the same thing from college to the NFL, that when you make a jump to each level, the talent is significantly different and the defenses are significantly better. And I think that's one thing that we're seeing with a lot of these guys. Like, look, Jackson Arnold would like a lot of that back, right? In Oklahoma, he's not playing right now because he's been so bad. And Michael Hawkins, the true freshman, who looked really good for a couple of games at Oklahoma because he was straight up not Jackson Arnold, but now looks really bad too because what Texas did to him yesterday was quite frankly inhumane. So a lot of these young guys in this conference right now, man, like really the only first-year starter in this conference is doing really well is Garrett Nussmeier, but he's also not a first-year
He's been
player.
around. And
he's been around.
He also got a big start in, what was it, the ReliaQuest Bowl last year?
And played like three-quarters of the game in the SEC championship game a couple of years ago when Daniels went down. So, I mean, the guy's had a lot of experience. He's older. The guy's old enough to drink. Right? And like at this level of football, sometimes that age matters. And I think that's one thing about Lenore's in terms of talking about like long-term, like is he the guy or not? I don't think we know right away. I don't. But I think yesterday you saw flashes of to why he can be. You also saw flashes as to if this thing doesn't get improved, then you're going to shoot yourself in the foot in a lot of close games. Then like the fumbles, right?
Yeah.
If you keep fumbling every game and you're losing turnover margin, it will no longer be a weird statistical fluky anomaly that you're losing one-score games. Eventually you'll be losing one-score games because you are losing those games yourself, right? That's why Scott Frost is fired. Yes, he got a lot. He was in every single game he played, had a record of one-score losses. What were they really bad at? Taking care of the football. And at some point, you got to be able to take care of the football enough to where you win those one-score games. Sometimes you have to create your own luck in that environment. And I think we're getting a little closer to seeing Lenore's be able to create his own luck within the offense. But you got to keep taking care of that ball. If you don't take care of the ball, it's a complete non-starter.
Totally. And let's just specify, because I get this comment, and I will say, one, like, you're right, Travis. Like, the fumbles were not the sole reason South Carolina lost that game. Let me rephrase. And Elijah, you can chime in on this. It was a reason they lost, not the reason. Because, look, there were other mistakes in that game. Like the defense, we'll get to them in a second with how close they played. Giving up that touchdown on 3rd and 10, right? Like I think Alabama could have kneeled it out potentially.
They should have. It was really dumb of them to score on that play. Why are you scoring there?
Yeah,
game's over.
I think South Carolina was probably preparing for the run on that play, if I had to guess, without going back and watching yet. But I will say, like, look, Sellers balled out yesterday for the most part. It's just like you said, Elijah. They got to clean up the fumbles because it's not just a one-game issue. It's been at this point, a 5-game issue for him in all the games he's played. But he really does have all the tools like we've known for a bit. He's really athletic, can really throw. He can move around. I was impressed with the way he was able to scramble out of the pocket. I thought that was some of the best running, he had as a quarterback in the SEC so far, but there's still room to grow. And that's the great thing about this is that, look, the season's not over. There's 6 games to go, and you could potentially be going to a bowl game. And I think that is a big success for South Carolina anytime you can get to a bowl game. But I want to fast forward to the end of the game because we're not done talking about the craziness in this game.
There's so much to unpack there.
Before we talk about the 2-point conversion, which I'm sure a lot of you are still wondering, like, what happened on that play, we got to talk about that final drive. So Alabama obviously took, a 27-19 lead with about, I'm trying to think, maybe like what, 90
I got it
seconds?
here in my notes. It was 27-19 with 154 remaining.
Yeah, so it basically became a 2-minute drill at that point. And look, South Carolina had done a very good job of moving up and down the field throughout the game, I think. Look, Alabama's defense really is not that impressive, even despite some of the turnovers they had in this game. But a lot of them were just, I think, South Carolina just making some poorly timed decisions, I think. Overall, though, offense moved the ball up and down the field pretty well. On that final drive there, not the final drive, the second to final drive, the penultimate drive, because we thought that was going to be it for South Carolina's offense, but ended up not being the case. That throw from Lenoris to Nick Harbor, that was a dime.
It was. It was. Put it like he did the one thing that we're asking him to do, right? That is put the ball where only your receiver can catch it and a defender not have a chance to catch it. The defender had zero chance of catching that ball. Nick Harbor, for the first time this year, has used his freakish size and athleticism to be able to wrestle a ball away in the corner of an end zone and be able to come away with the win, because not only was that a great throw, I mean, Nick Harbor had to pinpoint it at its highest point, catch it, control it. So when I first saw the replay, I was like, ooh, I don't know if he controlled it in time, but you saw his foot get down. Not just get down, it stayed down, right? It stayed down long enough for him to regain possession of the ball, tuck it, and then go out of bounds. That was as good of a play you'll see from this offense all year long. For it to happen in that moment, got to tip your cap, man. That was a really fun play. Great throw, great catch. And that's kind of what you've been dreaming of whenever Lenoris came to be the starter and Nick Harbor came here to be a wide receiver. You have been just begging and looking for that, all season long, last 2 years, right? And the fact that you got it in a really big spot right there is massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a great comment here, if I can find it. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Travis brings up a fantastic point. Lenoris has also led the team to a TD after each lost fumble. That's the big thing about Sellers, is that, look, despite the mistakes happening kind of in bunches yesterday, kind of sporadic throughout the game, kind of random, I thought he really did a good job of making sure he bounced back right after. Like, he made some really nice throws in this game, had some great runs. Like, again, South Carolina is not in a position to win that game without him at quarterback. Like, that's just clear as day. He really played pretty well overall. Yeah, would you like to take some of the mistakes back? Absolutely. But, and like Travis follows up, his ability to not let the previous play beat him twice will go a long way. I absolutely agree. And let's now talk about the 2-point conversion, because, look, I think it was a well-designed play.
Very.
It obviously would have worked. Here's where I stand on it. And yeah, he probably should have hit on that pass, because it was Rocket came across on a fake jet sweep, I believe, and Lenoris rolled out to the right. The problem was, and I don't know who was blocking this guy, but there was a defender that just came crashing in untouched, essentially, after maybe it was like a tight end blocking on this guy or something. But the point is, a defender was running right in Sellers' face, and as he was getting ready to throw, the guy hits him, and he's just got to throw it up and hope for the best. And the ball sails out of the end zone over Vandrevius Jacobs' head. And looking at the play, Jacobs was open. I think he would have, even if it's a little bit high, I think Jacobs could probably haul it in. It was pretty much uncatchable. And so it's like, after all that, and again, I'm not blaming Lenoris for this. It's just tough luck. And it's a good play by the Bama defense to really crash in and make things tough on him. It's just, you really wish you could have had those 2 points there, because you don't have to do the onside kick after, and you're potentially looking at going to overtime and trusting this defense. Look, this defense can play with anyone, as we know by now. So what are your thoughts on, I know you talked about it a little bit earlier, but what are your full-fledged thoughts on that 2-point play?
I thought that was about as good of a 2-point play as you can get. My favorite thing to do on a 2-point conversion is I love like a mesh across the middle, or a stick, like a tight end stick. Because if you got a really good big body tight end who can kind of use his body to be like, a rebounder in basketball, to almost box out like a safety or whoever's, guarding you, and be able to make a strong-handed catch, that's going to work more often than not. And I love the rollout, because at least it moves the defense a little bit. It allows maybe some confusion on the back end of the defense. And it did, because it left Dre Jacobs open in the corner of the end zone. I think that the pass was like it could have been there. He just sailed it. Like I think the throw was there. He's going to look back on this now, and when he watches that film, is going to really want that one back because I don't think it's a throw that he can't make. He hasn't had to make it a lot. That pass in the corner of the end zone. We have not seen Lenore's have to make that a ton, but I think in that scenario, that's the pass that was going to be there. So I love the play call. It's just one of those things that Lenore's going to have to learn whenever it's controlling where he's putting the ball, right? Because it would be different if he just threw it a smidge high and Dre Jacobs jumped it, might have missed him by a fingertip. But quite frankly, the ball hit the back. The ball almost went into the stands.
He could have thrown it sooner, though, too, like William Jones says here. And I agree. But at the same time, like, it's such a – I can't even imagine what it's like to be in that spot right there, being in his shoes.
I think he saw him open. That's why he sailed it. I think he got excited because he saw the guy open. And the adrenaline might have pushed it a little longer or further than he meant to be because the fact that it wasn't even close is what makes it so gut-wrenching and the fact that you had him open, right? Yeah, but it's one of those he'll make in the future, but at this point in time right now, it is a gut punch knowing how hard you had to fight to get back in that game and knowing the opportunity that laid ahead to not just beat Alabama, but beat a top 10 Alabama team on the road. And you are one throw away from taking it to overtime. To miss it like that is what hurts a lot. The play doesn't discourage me from Lenore Sellers long term because he does seem really receptive to coaching, and he's under an absolute microscope being a starting quarterback in the SEC as a redshirt freshman. But at the same time, that's with the game on the line. That's a throw you have to make. You'll have to be able to make moving forward.
I think he's going to be able to moving forward. And like Mark says right below us here, this is part of the process, right? You're going to miss on some big throws, and it's just a part of it. But the good thing is, like I said before, and like we said, he's only going to get better, I think, from this. And that's something Shane Beamer pointed out yesterday in his press conference. Like, he is going to learn from it. And like you said, he's very good about taking in coaching, it seems like. And look, it really, I can't even imagine what the feelings are like. And like you said, it's easy to say based on what we saw, but we don't know what Lenore saw. Yeah, and I think you're right, Elijah, and so are you, Travis. But I think it's also like he probably did get too excited on that. I don't know. I don't want to assume anything, but it's also just like, I mean, it really was a good play in my opinion. You had Alabama beat there, and it's unfortunate the throw just wasn't, on target. And I think he's going to be so much better from it in the future.
Definitely. That's he's not going to be able to make all the throws right now as he is at 20 years old. And even there's, like I said, even prodigies that are starting right now don't make all the throws. Arch Manning does not make all the throws. I know his numbers are video game like the amount of time he's had to play at Texas, but he's missing some throws. Exactly.
That's the thing.
Like, exactly. He hasn't had to play Alabama yet, right? And have to make that throw in that type of pressure environment. Like, it's one of those things now that he might end up making that throw to score a touchdown in, say, the A&M game or the Missouri game. And he can look back on that play at Alabama and say, look, I've gotten a position where I got excited because I saw somebody go run a corner route into the back pylon of the end zone. I had Dre Jacobs open, and I just put way too much juice on it, and the ball sailed. After repping that a whole lot more, I was able to get the ball down, and then you get in the same spot and let's just say the A&M Missouri game, or maybe even Oklahoma next week. Games that you're going to have to steal to be able to get into a bowl game. And if he's able to apply it then it's a good learning experience. It just sometimes the best of learning experiences come at the expense of the team or come at the expense of the possibility of winning big games. That's just football.
Let's shift over to, before we talk about the defense, one more thing we got to talk about with the offense here. The onside kick. And it's more of a special teams thing, honestly, but what happened after is offense. I have not seen the replay of it yet. That was a great onside kick. Phenomenal job. And Kai Kroger was the one who kicked it, right?
Yep. He drop kicked it. Didn't even put it on a tee. He drop kicked it. I've not seen an executed drop kicked onside kick in maybe ever. It's all predicated on spin, man. The spin he got on that football. I mean, the ball hit the Alabama player right square in the chest, and
it rolled around like it was. And I actually did remember. I do remember seeing the replay on it last night. It was it squirmed around, man. It was crazy.
The
And it's
rotation
just,
on that ball was insane.
and think about it, man, South Carolina's down by 2 points right there. Like most times, I don't know what the percentages are, but I know that the likelihood of recovering an onside kick by the kicking team, not very likely. And it's just, it was well executed. Phenomenal job. Beamer ball at its finest right there. And you get a chance you're only down by 2, so all you need is a field goal. Let's talk about the final drive there, because there's a lot to dissect from there from the few plays we saw. So, all right. So they're at what? Around the 50. Going back and looking at the plays here. We'll get into the big one in a second. So, pass complete short. I think what happened on that first play? Because Shivers picked
That was
it
the
up.
play. Yeah, that was the play. He got deflected in the air, or a play got the pass got batted at the line, and Shivers catches it and ends up maybe going a yard or two down the field. But that's one of those plays. And I don't blame Shivers at all, because your instinct is going to kick in and say, "Oh, ball's in the air, catch it," before anybody else does, and try to make a play. But he caught the ball. You had no timeouts left. I think that ended up milking like 20 seconds off the clock, and you're only able to run maybe 1 or 2 plays after that. I think that was, in hindsight, it's easy to say, hey, instead of catching it, just knock that mess down and let's live to have another play with more time on the clock. But
And
instinct's going to kick in, man. Instinct's going to kick in. It did. He caught it. They unfortunately for South Carolina, it just burnt too much time off the clock.
And because, look, like you said, they didn't have any timeouts in that situation. They had to burn their timeouts. I can't remember why they had to burn their first timeout. It was way earlier in the half. But like when the clock when time started coming down a little bit, when you're on defense, you had to burn your timeouts to preserve as much time as you could to go back out there and put the drive that you did together on offense to get it to a 2-point game. But the fact that you didn't, you really would have loved to have a timeout there. It's just, it's unfortunate that you didn't, and I understand why you didn't. But the 3rd and 8 play, there was a comment we had. I need to pull it up here. Let's see. This is something that when we talked to Shane tonight, teleconference, if someone doesn't ask it, I will certainly be asking about this, because I'm very interested to hear what he has to say after watching the tape. From what I remember, and like the comment says, on that 3rd and 8 play, Sellers had someone open. I think it was Larvadane, kind of open near the sideline, and no one was around him. Like you dump that ball off to him with 13 seconds to go, instead of throwing it deep like you did. You could probably turn it upfield, get out of bounds, and you're probably set up. I don't want to assume, but I'm going to guess you probably pick up, you get to around maybe the 30, 25. I'm not sure. What did you see on the TV broadcast watching that play? Because Sellers obviously ultimately just chucked it up downfield to Nick Harbor and hope for something good to happen. But Nick really didn't seem to, be turned around well on the ball.
Not at all.
I just felt like he didn't know where it was going, and that's okay. It happens. But look, it was just I think you had the guy open over there, and I know Sellers didn't see. If he didn't see him on that play, I don't know. But there were times in this game, not just that play, where he had some open receivers. Like there was another play with Larvadane, a little bit over the middle on a straight go route, I think, and he was open, but Sellers didn't see him. So I think it's stuff like that where maybe he just didn't see him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think in that situation, because the commenter's right. Larvadane was coming closer. He's turning off his route closer to the sideline, and really that's a lot to unpack for someone like Sellers, because I understand what he might want to do and try to, in terms of making a play, right? Trying to make a play, trying to go downfield and win this thing. He just got done in the last series, throwing that thing up to Harbor and letting Harbor make a play. Unfortunately for Nick, he didn't track the ball, and he had no idea where the ball was until it was intercepted. It was a little too late to know where the ball was.
2 guys were back there too.
Yeah,
Malachi Moore and then Jackson. That was I'm not saying that's why they got picked off, but it's it didn't help that 2 guys were playing man deep there, and it's
it still would have been a tough throw to Larvadane though, because that same safety, because you had Moore. You had Jackson who picked the ball off, and Moore's there because Moore saw that ball go in the air and knew it wasn't going towards Larvadane. If he throws it towards Larvadane, Moore has a little bit of an angle on that play, which he could have still made. So the throw to Larvadane was there. I don't think it was a layup or a gimme, because look, that corner is playing his own, right? So he's dropping back and he's trying to read the eyes of the quarterback and see the direction. It's kind of like what O'Donnell Fortune did on the pick, right? Like his responsibility was the flat. He saw where the ball was going, jumped it, and was able to pick it off. Moore was kind of in the same spot there for Alabama on that play we're talking about right now. So I think the play was there. Would it have been a 100% layup towards the sideline? I don't think so. I mean, if we're using basketball terms, it'd be like a contested 17-foot jumper, still makeable. But it would have been a really impressive throw for him to make that across his body and be able for the ball to beat Moore or a safety or whoever it was that was there. It's tough. It's tough in that situation. You would like to try to take the higher percentage throw on that because all you need is a field goal, right? Again, all you need is a field goal and you win the game. You're down 2. Time and score. It's, when you drill these type of things in the preseason or even in a bye week, you want to be able to do 2-minute drills where all time and score. Know what you can accept and know what plays you can't accept. You cannot accept a sack. You cannot accept an interception. You cannot accept throwing the ball in the middle of the field before the sticks because that ends the entire game, right? It ends the entire game right there. So in a position like that, where he has to make a split-second decision, he's probably thinking, put the ball at least in the end zone, give a receiver a chance, because the pocket broke down. On that play, the pocket broke down very quickly. And really his only 2 options are Harbor on the post, Larvidan on the out towards the sideline. In hindsight, the higher percentage pass is going to be to Larvidan. In that split-second decision, he made a chance to go for it all, and that's another thing he's going to look at on tape because he's gotten a lot of the offense down. And I think they're finally figuring out what your easy buttons are as an offense. Yes. But when you get down to the more minute, detailed plays at the end of a game that can help win you or lose you a game late, that's his next step. There's a next step that Lenoris is going to have to make. I think that next step will be in a 2-minute drill. 2 safeties are leading up towards your post, hitting Larvidan towards the sideline, because if you make that pass, which is a higher percentage pass, he catches the ball, he goes out of bounds, bam, you give Alex Herrera a chance to win you the game right there. But in the moment, I can see why he would make that pass to Harbor. But the more I watch it, the more you will realize, that the pass to Larvidan was there. Maybe not a 100% gimme, but the ball or the pass was there. It could have been made.
Have you seen any? I've seen people comment about pass interference potentially on the play. I don't remember, unless I'm completely just forgetting something. Watching the game live in person, did you see anything on the watch or rewatch that made you feel like, oh, pass interference should have been called on that play?
Not that I saw. When I go back again, because they showed the replay a couple times, I didn't see anything initially that could have pass interference. Now, but again, admittedly, wasn't looking for a pass interference. I was kind of trying to find, where there might have been some of the throws. That's when I kind of became fixated on the Gage Larvidan play too, and really watching more so the route Gage was running and the angle that Malachi Moore would have had to try to pick it off or make a play or do whatever. But no, to answer the question, though, I didn't necessarily see anything that screamed PI upon first watch, but I'd have to go back and watch that one again. There's so much to have to rewatch in this game that I have. I put little asterisks or stars on my notes whenever I do watch these games, whether in person or on TV, to where I'm going to want to watch 3 or 4 different things on that play. And this bad boy is just littered with stars and asterisks on it, especially in that second half, man, because it got really weird.
It was crazy. And the last thing we'll talk about before we hit on defense for the rest of the show, special teams. I'll go back to the first kick, the 37-yard field goal by Alex Herrera with 1 second to go. Great on the defense for getting that pick right there and going out of bounds to preserve enough time on the clock to cut it to a 14-12 game. I disagree with kicking a 51-yard field goal later in the game in the fourth quarter. I think, you really weren't set up in a great spot to go for it either. I think it was going to be 4th and 13.
Yeah, trying to find a spot where it would have been, because I want to say it was started at the 36 maybe. It was going to be Herrera hasn't hit from that range. But it's I don't know. I just think that was a tough spot to put him in. 4th and 15.
Yeah, and so it's kind of a lose-lose for South Carolina because you can go for it and get lucky potentially, and actually maybe have a good play drawn up and get it there. But you went and tried kicking it, and it didn't work out, and like I feel bad for Herrera, but at the same time, I think with how much he missed that kick by, I think that's why we saw South Carolina not try to even kick it at the end of the game. They're like, when talking to Stellers after the game, I'll read off the direct quote, kind of just about what he saw there. The question was, what did you see on that final possession after the onside kick? And he said, quote, really just, we've got to score. We didn't really have timeouts. We ran that first play, and it was down to like 10 seconds left. So we've got to take a shot to the end zone. We could have probably gotten an intermediate pass out and spiked the ball or whatever, but in that situation, you want to get to the end zone. So from what I gather from that right there, I think – I could be wrong on this. I think they were just trying to go for yeah, a field goal is all you need to win the game, but it's like it's no guarantee you're making that field goal. Like, and I hate that because it's like I don't know. I mean, I think if you threw it to Gage on the outside there and he cuts upfield and goes out of bounds and you have like 3-4 seconds left, I think you take your chances with him kicking the field goal to go for the win. Win or lose on that play, I think you ride with it, even despite the fact he missed the field goal earlier. But I understand why they decided, with what Sellers said, if it's true, like going for the end zone. I understand because you also had a lot of momentum on offense going, and you also just hit on a deep ball to Nick Harbor before. So who's to say you can't do it again? It just didn't happen.
Yeah, my thing with the field goal on 4th and 15, the more I think about it, trust me, I am like the king of like analytics dork nerd, go for it on 4th down. I am the most go for it on 4th down human being, maybe to ever walk this earth. That's a title I will proudly proclaim. But on 4th and 15, given your offense's success on 4th down a lot this year, and given how in like 3rd and long situations, Cade Womack was bringing the house, man. Yeah, one thing I did notice is every 3rd down, he was sending everyone he could, cover 0, and unless you get that ball out there like that, you're not going to have a successful play. From 51 yards, I think he trusted Herrera to make it. I don't know if he had the leg. It looked like on the first kick that he had it, that he missed it, that it kind of just shifted way too far right.
But, so I watched the replay on it, and initially when I watched it live, I was like, oh my God, that kick didn't even like go anywhere close, and ultimately didn't get close. But I will say I think it had the distance. It just wasn't on target. And I'm interested to see what Shane kind of saw on that play when I'm assuming he'll get asked about it tonight. Because look, he obviously, I'm sure he can kick it really good in practice, but practice is one thing compared to, like Big Red says, the environment, man. That is
that environment in Tuscaloosa. Yeah. Not a good environment that you would like to see your kicker try his first 51-yard field goal, which is a fair point. Fair point.
It's like college football 25 brought to life. Like, we know how hard it is to kick on the road in that game. It's legit, man. And I know South Carolina is not the only school that has missed field goals this year. Like, it's gonna happen. But it's just, if it was a little bit closer to maybe if it's in the 40s, you obviously feel a lot better about kicking it. Maybe in some situations, you're just like, screw it, we're going for it. But it was 4th and 15. It's really a lose-lose situation, like I said, because, it's too long to go for, in my opinion. But it was also just a very long kick. And I don't think punting was going to be the right decision there. And I don't even think kicking's been that big of an issue for South Carolina this year. However, I will say, and the LSU game is justified because South Carolina should have won that game way earlier. It should not have come down to a field goal. And I don't think this game necessarily came down to a field goal either. But this is 2 games now where you've missed in crunch time, and it kind of impacts the final score to some extent. Like, again, it is not, let's just be clear. It's not the reason South Carolina lost. Like, absolutely not. Not in either game. But I will say it's starting to seem like it's becoming something where it's like, do they have an issue at kicker? I don't know. Do you have a better option? You have Mason Love. But I wouldn't even think about putting a freshman in that spot. Like, that's way too tough. This is a 6th-year guy that, again, he has had to sit behind Parker White and Mitch Jeter and stuff. Like, I don't know. It's a really heavy pressured situation, and it stinks that he missed, but
Yeah, it should change how you play call on that side of the field. So really, if you are a coach or an offensive coordinator, or you're Shane Beamer, you kind of have to get into in the days leading up to the game, saying, okay, if we get onto the positive side of the 50 and we're in the 45, what plays do you call to guarantee that your third down play is going to be close enough for you to want to make it 4-down territory? Because now 4-down territory for you, I think, is extended. All right, I would not feel confident kicking Alex 51-plus yards just because I think we just know what his limitations are, right? At the college game, that's totally acceptable to know what your kicker's limitations are, and you have to play to what those limitations are. It's no knock to Alex, but like we know, it's if you have to bank on a kicker making 50-plus yard field goals to win every game, then you might not deserve to win every game, right? But all it tells me is when you get into that side of the field, what you do for play calling is going to have to change, because what you don't want to do is put yourself in a 4th and 15 and think, oh, do I really want to punt from the plus side of the 50? Because that's one thing that grinds my gears greater than anything on the planet is a team that is punting from the other, like the positive side of the 50. If you are in your opponent's territory, the word punt should no longer be in your vocabulary, right?
No.
Unless you're up like 7.
By the way.
Yeah.
They were at the 33. Like that is
you do not.
You're not punting in that situation.
No.
No.
So at that point, it's when you get into those downs, you get to the point of, hey, how do I make 4th down as short as possible? Because if we're still not in our kicker's range, we need it to be 4th and short. That way, like an out route can get you a 1st down. One of those little passes to the flat for Josh Simon can get you a 1st down, or maybe a halfback dive can get you the 1st down. You need to be as close as possible. At that point, you start calling the game like you are in 4-down territory, because you just know what the limitations of your kicker are. I think we have a sample size now that we know what Alex's what his limitations are, and just don't put him in that position as much as you need, as much as you can. And part of that would just be how you play call, because the one thing that made this 51-yard attempt necessary was the sole fact that it was 4th and 15. Because I guarantee you, if it was 4th and 6, they're going for it. And
easily.
Same spot on the field, but the markers moved up, right? Say it's 4th and 6 on the 33, and you're like, okay, do we kick a 51-yard field goal, or do we go for it on 4th and 6? You go for it on 4th and 6, because you, at that point, especially in the second half where you converted your first 5 third downs, you are money in clutch downs.
Yes.
Then at that point, you go for it, right? And I don't think people are too hacked off that you decide to not try a 51-yard field goal, because again, you know your players' limitations, and at this point in the season, you're dancing with who you brought here, right? So you might as well go ahead and start play calling to the strengths and weaknesses of what your roster is.
Totally. And last point on special teams here. Love has proven he has the leg. In high school, sure. We haven't seen it in games, though. He hasn't played yet. That's a really – and I don't even think South Carolina probably even thought about bringing him out there. Like, you're trusting Alex Herrera to go out there and kick. That would be insanely too much pressure to put on a young kid, freshman after all, kicker, coming in and kicking in that situation. And look, I think you learned at this point what, like you said, Elijah, what his range probably is. Like, we're probably looking at maximum. Like, I think he can kick it from 50. It just has to straighten out a little bit.
Be on a specific hash mark, too. I mean, some kickers need it to be on a specific hash mark from different ranges. That's why in the NFL all the time you'll see teams waste a 3rd down play because they'll run it to one side or the other late in games, because they want to be able to kick from a specific hash, because that's where they're most comfortable, right? And, of course, in the NFL, you have all the data in the world to know exactly where your kicker is the most money from. Exactly. And you're able to say, okay, yeah, we want to win this game. There's 30 seconds left. The other team has no timeouts. It's 3rd and 12 right now. Where do you want the ball, right? And the kicker say, give me 2 on the right hash. All right, we'll run a small sweep to the right hash and go down. But at that point in time, it helps when you have that type of relationship with your kicker.
Man, we've talked so much about this offense that I told you, like 30, 45 minutes, man. This is definitely going to go over an hour. So let's transition into this defense, because I think the defense it's not as hard to talk about like some of the issues. Like, were there some issues in this game from a defensive standpoint? Sure. But I think for the most part, I feel like I can't even put a ballpark number on it percentage-wise of like how well this defense played. But again, holding Alabama, this high potent offense we hear about, like Jalen Milroe, Ryan Williams, Jam Miller, Justice Haynes. They had their moments in this game, but I think South Carolina more times than not did a great job on defense. And you held the tie to 27 points, which is the same total you held Ole Miss to last week. And I think it begs the question, man, and this really might be a hot take, if anything. So do we feel like obviously the defense has been phenomenal this year, but do we feel like South Carolina in general is just kind of like wasting a great defensive season in some ways?
In a way, because it does really suck to have some of the performances you've had and still not come away with wins, right? I know you gave up 36 to LSU, but if you go back and look at that game, you look at that third quarter in particular where your offense can't stay on the field and one team runs 25 plays, the other one runs 6, then you're going to get tired. And that was one thing after that game too, that Debo Williams mentioned after the game. You got a little tired in that third quarter. That's how you gave up a lot of those chunk plays. So, and then you look at the entirety of that game and you realize that well over 50% of LSU's total yardage in that game came in the third quarter. And if your offense is able to at least give your defense like a little bit of a breather, then you probably win that game. I think that was probably more influential than officiating, than turnovers, anything else, is that your defense, the strength of your team, was neutralized through one quarter because you couldn't keep your offense on the field. It feels like very unfortunate that's what cost you a game, right? It feels really unfortunate that offense cost you a game against Ole Miss, where after a nightmarish first quarter of the game, your defense kept you in it because they only gave up 13 points the rest of the way, and your offense couldn't do anything remotely close enough to resemble a team that deserved to be within earshot of winning that game. That's wasting that game. Yeah. I think your defense played – I think you didn't waste this game. I think you wasted 2 games, basically, with how great your defense has played. Because, look, you might have the best 2 pass rushers in the entire SEC. Yeah, that's honest to God, the truth. And as much as Dylan Stewart, maybe statistically – as what Jay Phillips and I call the football card stats, isn't as eye-popping as he was the first couple of weeks. You watch how Alabama was blocking Dylan Stewart. When Dylan Stewart was on the field, they're getting in max protect. They're running stuff out of empty because they needed everybody up at the offensive line enough to be able to keep those guys at bay. And there was at one point in the game where, the broadcasters are straight up befuddled, right? Jesse Palmer was straight up confused as to why Alabama's forgetting Kyle Kennard's there, because they're putting so much attention on Dylan Stewart to have like a tight end or running back chip block him to the point where they would shift the protection over that way. And when they shifted the protection over that way, Kyle Kennard's running naked right into the backfield, causing havoc and giving Jalen Milroe nightmares he may never recover from. But, I mean, that at some point, it almost felt like they were forgetting that Kyle Kennard's on the field, the guy that's like the second in the country in sacks. How do you forget that guy's on the field? Oh, yeah, because there's this wonder kid freshman on the other side of the defensive line who will eat you alive because he's also one of the best defensive ends in all of college football. It is really unfortunate to have that advantage and not be able to utilize it more than 3 times in 3 games. And I think you can attribute a lot of that to the offense's futility and having to figure out what they figured out. But at the beginning of the season, if you told me that you're only taking a 2-point loss to Alabama on the road, I'm saying your defense is every bit as good as I expected. Yeah. And that defense will keep you in every single game. And that's the one thing about this defense. And that's the one thing what a great defense and a great pass rush will do, especially in a conference with a lot of great quarterbacks. It may not win you every game. It will keep you in every single game. It will keep you in every single game. It will keep you within earshot of winning games as long as your offense can cooperate and be functional. This past yesterday, they were functional enough to keep you in a game at Alabama. So which means these games at Oklahoma, home against A&M, at Vanderbilt, home against Missouri, this is a massive 4-game stretch. But you don't feel like you're going to be outmatched in any of them. You feel like you're going to have be within a possession or up by a possession in every single game because your defense is so good. And that's all you can really ask for, from the defense. So long-winded way of answering, do I think it's wasted? In a couple games, yes. Throughout the course of the season, it's still TBD. There's still time to determine how much it is wasted. Because, look, if you do only drop one of these games, so you beat Oklahoma on the road, say you split the Missouri and A&M,
and then Vandy.
And then you beat Vandy, and then you go into Clemson with a 7-4 record. And look, with a defense that good, where you're in every game,
you got a chance.
You can be within a possession of being 8-4. How many Gamecock fans listening to this right now would have given an appendage to be 8-4 this year, knowing what you knew about the roster? A lot of you might. And I would not have foreseen 8-4 at all. But the fact that your defense is so good, it provides that possibility for you to reach that if your offense cooperates.
Totally.
There's the asterisk right there, if your offense cooperates.
And that's the reason I brought the question up, man, for this comment right here. You're losing so many guys next year. I think we forget.
Yeah.
Like Kyle Kennard, 6th year, he's gone. D Knight, he's gone next year. Debo Williams, probably, I think he's gone next year. Bam Martin Scott, gone next year. Nicky Minwari, probably heading to the NFL draft. I don't know.
DJ Sanders. I mean, he can opt for the NFL draft.
Boogie, you're losing a majority. Like, it scares me to think what next year could be like defensively. And look, this is the great point brought up. That's what the portal's for. That's how South Carolina was able to bring in the guys that they brought in. At the same time, it's not always going to be like what you got right now. You're not going to be able to find – you may find someone similar to D Knight with his leadership and stuff, but those type of qualities are hard to come by, especially with how he presents himself. He's a great guy and a real leader for this defense. And then you got Kyle Kennard. He honestly, I said it a few weeks ago, I do think he's going to break Jadeveon Clowney's single-season sack record at South Carolina. At some point,
I can see it.
Like, he's up to what, like 6.5, 7.5 now? Like, he needs like 5 or 6 more. And we'll talk about Kennard here in a minute. But the point is, man, like, you're losing so many guys on defense next year. I would hate to see this team. I'm not saying they're going to. I would hate to see this team not make a bowl game this year because their offense couldn't get it figured out completely. Because the defense, like I said, and like you said, will keep them in every single game. And that is why I still feel like my prediction at the beginning of the year was 8-4. I still very well feel like they can go out there and do it because the schedule, it looked daunting at the beginning of the year. But Missouri kind of looks like, right now. Vandy obviously is playing much better than people expected.
Yeah. They went to Kentucky and proved something last night.
Oh, man, that was crazy. Like, A&M is going to be tough. But I feel like Clemson's going to be tough. And next week's going to be tough against OU. But I feel like overall, man, they're giving you a chance every single game. It's just we saw the offense do some good things this weekend. Can they limit the mistakes and can build off of what they did? Because there was a lot of good in that game. And we're going to see what happens. But the biggest impact guy on defense yesterday, in my opinion, Kyle Kennard. Unbelievable game yesterday. We knew coming into this game that slowing down Jalen Milroe was going to be very tough. You knew you had to do it in order to have a chance. You didn't just do it. You made his life miserable, especially in that first half. You had 4 sacks in the first half, 2 of which came by Kennard. He had 3 tackles for loss. And, oh, by the way, he was fully responsible for that safety South Carolina had. Mm-hmm. And on that play on the safety, we talk about the tight ends and the other guys blocking, trying to, put more attention on Dylan Stewart. On that safety there, the tight end broke off from Kennard to try to, I think he was going to run a route or something. I don't know, because it was a pass play. And that left Kennard untouched going right after Milroe. And it was like open season on him. And obviously, Milroe tried throwing it away, but it was intentional grounding in the end zone for a safety. So I really don't know where this defense would be without a guy like Kyle Kennard, who brings so much leadership and experience as a 6th-year guy. And this is his first season. Like, South Carolina is only going to get him for maximum this year, 13 games, and then that's it. That's really crazy to me. But the impact he's making, it is like it's easily, I think, like first-team All-American type stuff we're seeing from him.
Yeah. Oh, it really is. It's an incredibly special season, and it proves that you're doing something right in some of the scouting that you're doing for the transfer portal. Because the transfer portal can giveth and it can taketh away, and there is not a better example of that in college football than Florida State. Right? They nailed on a lot of offensive transfer portal guys to help have them stick around for a couple of years, and then give them an undefeated regular season and an ACC championship, and be deserving of a college football playoff spot. Now, this year they whiffed on a lot of guys who were not as good as maybe stats showed, or maybe as maybe their rating was coming out of high school at their previous high school stops, and now they're a miserable bleeping mess. And they're 1-5. They're really bad. But one thing this is proving is that at least, you landed a guy who you saw maybe a diamond in the rough in terms of he played his career at Georgia Tech, and you saw potential in him to be able to bring him to this level and be able to succeed right away. And that's the reason why you go after some of these guys and you invest the money in some of these guys is to be instant plug-and-play impact players, and Kyle Kennard has been that. And he is a one-man game wrecking crew. And the fact that you can pair him with a Dylan Stewart makes everything come into place with how your defense can be, because you have talented players in the secondary, and that allows them to do their jobs. I think, remember, after the game at Kentucky, I remember asking Nick Emmett-Worry in the presser, how easy does it make life for you guys when Kyle and Dylan are getting to the quarterback like that? And he says they can play free. They can take risks. They can gamble a little bit. Quarterbacks are getting shelled into making passes they wouldn't normally make, and that feeds them interceptions sometimes. And it did in that game because Nick had a pick six in which Brock Vandegrift had defenders in his rib cage before he had time to be able to process where he wanted the ball to go. And it makes a huge impact. And the acquisition of Kyle Kennard, the acquisition of Dylan Stewart, single-handedly, along with bringing back Tonka, TJ, other guys on the defensive line, because there was a real threat of Tonka not being here this year.
It's like the last dance, man. It's like you brought all the guys back for one more go at it.
And brought in these two behemoths, and it makes a good defense a great defense. Because they are a great defense. It's the top 15 unit in the sport, I would say, right now.
Easily. All right, man. So before we kind of start closing things out here and getting you out of here, look at the big picture, because there's so much other things. We obviously, we can't fit everything into a hour and a half show. It's just not possible. That's also what we're both on 107.5 The Game this week every day. So if you guys want to catch more of our takes and stuff and kind of more thoughts from the games, because Reaction Mondays tomorrow and stuff.
All day, baby.
All day. It's going to be awesome.
Day.
I'm on from 9 to 10 with Tyler Head. And then Elijah, you're on with Jay from 3 to 6, right? So it's going to be
yes, sir.
A lot of things to talk about. Let's look ahead a little bit. And we're not going to fully look ahead to Oklahoma, but just more so big picture. I think yesterday showed you a lot that, you lost. Yeah, you did some things wrong in this game that led to the loss. You played a very good competitive game, in my opinion, to where I think if it's like this every week, you have a great chance to win in any given ball game. It just comes down to, the mistakes. Can you limit them the best you can? I feel like the penalties weren't a big issue yesterday. I think despite having maybe 6 of them. But it was
a bigger issue for Alabama than it was for you, honestly.
Exactly. But the turnovers, that was probably what really, kind of, I don't even want to say lost the game, but it had a really big impact on the game and how things kind of ended up going. So moving forward, I mean, just kind of in a quick, kind of just short answer, what are 3 things you'd like to see this team improve upon for next week? I mean, look, there's a lot of good from yesterday, but at the same time, there's still a lot of stuff that you hold the ball in the fumble, or I'm trying to think, you decide to go for it on this play or whatever. Mm-hmm. What do you see as something that if South Carolina does X, Y, and Z, they're going to be fine for next week?
The big thing is Lenore's taking care of the football, and that's really, I think that is the next step that you can make, right? Because he's showing he can make some of these throws. I think you're finally finding the easy buttons in your offense. I thought the play calling was really good yesterday, because you got to see a lot of the creative stuff. Look, the orbit motion of Gage Larvadan going around your QB and your running back and be able to Sellers taking the snap and then basically being used as a second part of a triple option. It was masterful, right? There's a whole lot of that, and it's not overly complex, but there's a lot of eye candy that can really help you deceive the defense. I'd like to see some of that, and I'd like to see a whole lot more of that, and a whole lot more of moving a defense around, moving Lenoris around, being able to get him in advantageous situations of triple option type stuff where a defense has to account for 1 to 3 things on the football field at once. Make them think as much as Lenoris has to think, right? So if Lenoris can make that step to continue mastering that element of the offense while maintaining the ability to take care of the ball, because look, the fumbles between him and Robbie this year have either been when he's been hit and he's trying to decide whether to throw it or tuck it, or it comes through a read option where he has to pull the ball out of the belly of a running back and keep it himself. That's how Robbie fumbled in the Ole Miss game. That's how Lenoris fumbled against Alabama. You got to be able to protect that football. If you keep doing that, you're going to lose all these one-score games. You're going to be in a lot of one-score games because your defense will keep you in it, and you will lose them because you lose the turnover battle. The reason Vanderbilt beat Alabama and you did not was Vanderbilt had 0 turnovers. Alabama had 2, and Vanderbilt turned those 2 turnovers into 13 points. That's the biggest. That is really the big difference maker, right? Because you are better than Vanderbilt at a lot of different things when it comes to defending Jalen Milroe. You were better than Vanderbilt at a lot of different things when it came to success in the red zone. There's a lot of things you did better than Vanderbilt because football can be football. Sometimes you just didn't win it. But protection of the ball is one thing. Lenore's been taking that next step in running this offense and having reads that he can make. Being able to get him as comfortable as possible is another thing. And then continuing to force turnovers on defense would be another one too. That's what kept you in this game. Is forcing those turnovers. I mean, the O'Donnell forced an interception. I don't know if you recognize this too. It was the exact same play of the Old Dominion game. When Old Dominion was is when Lenore fumbled the ball. Lenore fumbled the ball, and Nick Harbor made the touchdown-saving tackle. Grant Wilson, the quarterback for Old Dominion, looks to the corner of the end zone. O'Donnell's covering the flat, right? It's clearly a zone,
he's right near the pylon,
play, and he's covering the flat, but he reads the eyes of the quarterback. He jumps over there, makes that play. If your secondary can make those plays because your defensive ends are so good, because your defensive line is as good as it was. Because look, Taka got in on the sacks yesterday, and he was unblockable at times. Your defensive line is so good to the point where if you're able to help them out by getting interceptions and controlling field position that way, then you're going to backdoor yourself into wins, even when your offense doesn't play well, right? You see a lot of teams in college football all the time backdoor themselves into games that have no business being in Iowa. Because their defense is so good and they force turnovers and they're able to put even a bad offense in advantageous situations to come away with at least 3 points. So I think if we're really wanting to see some improvement, see a lot of consistency, because that's the big thing too. Like, look, we said a lot of this very same stuff after the LSU game, where it's like, oh, you went toe-to-toe with one of the nation's 10 to 15 best teams. You should be able to do this on a more frequent basis. But you saw a lot more inconsistencies, and then you saw the total regression back down to the floor against Ole Miss. But then you saw it come back to life a little bit. Manage the turnovers, keep finding your easy buttons on offense to where you can resort to getting chunk plays at a time. Whatever play calling groove Dowell Loggins got himself in, whatever bag he was digging to the bottom of on that 16-play, 85-yard drive that took away 8.5 bleeping minutes of football off the clock, was masterful. You're able to do that. You're going to put yourself in every single game, and you're going to win more than not as long as you don't lose that turnover battle.
Absolutely, man. And that's another thing that we haven't even got a chance to talk about that we'll do so real quick. Dowell Loggins, I think rightfully so, faced a lot of criticism. He faced the music this week in press conferences after the Ole Miss game. I mean, look, he said himself, like, if you want to blame anyone for that game, the way the offense performed, blame him, like clear as day. And I think in this game, look, there are some play calls that I was kind of puzzled by. Some of the third down, or it might have been like a fourth down play call where you went for it in Bama territory. You threw it to the outside to Josh Simon, and you tried to, it was a short pass play, and it's a 9 yards, it's 9 yards to the sticks. You're trying to have him turn upfield and, run through defenders and stuff. I didn't agree with that play call off the top of my head. But overall, as the game wore on, it's not some accident South Carolina got 25 points on the board. Like, the defense played great, but the offense really showed up in this game and played better as the game wore on. And in spite of all the mistakes, you were this close to winning. Mm-hmm. You limit those mistakes, like you said, man. It's a huge difference in the way we're talking about this game right now. But I think there's a lot of good to build off of, and we'll see what happens in OU, man. Are you going to be there?
This is the one that I knew at the beginning of the year I would not be able to go to. So I will be watching it on a non-sponsored Elijah Campbell couch once again this next week. But look, I will say another thing too. If you pick up almost 5 yards of carry like you did against Alabama, sack adjusted, then you're going to win that game. Yeah. The offensive line grew up a little bit too. I think that's the one thing I had written down that I wanted to mention, haven't gotten to yet. Offensive line, pass protection still has some holes. It's not perfect by any means. You are still you're definitely not winning the Joe Moore Award trophy anytime soon. But you ram block significantly better in this game than you have in a long time, enough to be able to get Rocket comfortable and moving and to be able to pick up 5 yards a pop. So that was really cool. You're able to do that, you're going to win a lot more games. Take pressure off Lenore's as well.
Absolutely, man. Look, I appreciate you hopping on. Before I let you get out of here, just want to let you plug in whatever you got going on. Obviously, you're at 107.5 The Game. Where can people find you and follow along with your work?
Yeah, absolutely. From 3 to 6 every day, 107.5 The Game on your terrestrial radio with Jay Phillips and myself. We host the post-game show. You can catch us on the Game TV, which is our YouTube page, just 107.5 The Game. And then we have an app too. So if you download the 107.5 The Game app, you can listen to all of our program from 6A to 6P, even the games that we're talking about right now. We'll listen to the game at Oklahoma next week. You can do that on our app as well as our terrestrial radio airway. Of course, you can follow along with me and my other takes at _Campbell3 on Twitter. So I'm a big fan of the discourse and looking forward to chatting with you guys in the future. And I'm not looking forward to seeing what the score is of this New Orleans Saints Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, because I just saw a comment about Spencer throwing a third pick. And when I last looked, it was like 31-27, and I'm terrified to look now. So
he was having a great first half, man.
He was. He was playing so well. He was playing so well.
I don't know, man. But also the Saints defense was just turning up, dude. It was crazy.
Cam Jordan still got it in him.
Yeah, man.
Still got it in him. He still got it. The guy's been in the league for like a decade. He still got it.
Look, the thing with the NFL isn't just like with Sellers here. You can't give up on a guy after one game. Rattler he's made some great throws in this game from what I saw in the first half. I haven't been able to watch the second half because we've been talking on here, but look, I'm really thinking he's going to do fine in New Orleans. So. It just takes time. But Elijah, appreciate you hopping on, buddy, and I will we'll talk again soon. Do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Jack. Anytime, brother. Good stuff.
All right, appreciate it, buddy. I'll see you later. That was good friend of the channel, Elijah Campbell, who does a great job over at 107.5 The Game. Absolutely phenomenal. And so I really want to appreciate him hopping on and talking some Gamecocks, and appreciate you guys all tuning in. Great show. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. I'm going to get to some of the questions now because I wanted to mention this. Oh, thank you for the score update, by the way. 40. What? Dude, this game is crazy. It was what? I can't even remember the score, but the Bucs were up 17-0, I think. And then they started turning the ball over. Like Baker Mayfield had 3 turnovers in the second quarter. And then it's just Spencer Rattler in this offense. They had the punt return touchdown, the pick 6, I think they had 2. And then Spencer had the 2 touchdown throws. And it's like the Saints are right back in it. What? Oh, my gosh, man. Crazy. That's a high-scoring NFL game. But anyway, what I was saying was I got a lot of questions to answer that I've been saving over the last hour that we've been talking. Got Shane Beamer's teleconference here at 5 o'clock, so not going to try to run too much longer with the show, but I'm going to make sure I get around to answering all these great questions that we had throughout the course of the show. So first one here comes from Dan. Apologies if I butcher this. Rickabaugh. I can't understand why our big O-line can't give Sellers more time in the pocket, or does he leave the pocket too quickly? Yeah, so, again, I'll have a better answer on this. I hate to say that, but I'll have a better answer on it tomorrow what I'm going to do, I think, when I'm watching back to this game on the Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com, like I have been on the few occasions when I get a chance to fully watch the game through. Going to share my thoughts as I'll go along, and so you guys can catch that tomorrow. Probably I'm on radio from 9 to 10, and then as soon as I get back, I'll probably just be turning it on and kind of watch through the game because I got my Great in the Gamecock story coming out tomorrow afternoon that I got to work on. So I'll have a better answer tomorrow on the Insiders Forum, but I will say from what I can recall watching that game live, the offensive line was a struggle in the early going. I think they just weren't giving enough time. I do think as the game wore on, he was able to make some great throws, and I think that's a credit to the offensive line making some blocks. But again, the fumbles, some of that, I think more of that's just on Sellers and not taking the best care of the football, but some of it might just be on the protection too. So, but the pass pro is a work in progress. Like Elijah said before, this isn't the Joe Moore Award offensive line. It's a work in progress, and we'll have to see. And is that highly recruited kicker coming next year? We don't have a better kicker this year. They have Mason Love. They have William Joyce, who lost the kicker battle to Alex Herrera. But for next year, they have the guy named Max Kelly coming, a 6'2", 210-pound kicker. He's a 3-star, and he's ranked 3rd at his position. So, again, and if it's anything similar to Mason Love, maybe he won't play right away next year. But we'll have to see what happens. And, I think they do have some – I think Mason Love, you could rock with him, but not in that situation you were in yesterday with Herrera. It's just – I think Herrera's got the leg for it. It's just got to get the accuracy down a little bit better. Dan also asks, Nick Harbor looked the best he has all year. Why do you think he didn't know to look for that pass in the last play of the game? And I was going to clip this in here, but if you guys caught me on GC Live with Kendall on Wednesday, she asked me about Nick, and I kind of just said, like, I'm eating my words on this, but I basically said it's going to take it a while before Nick goes out here and explodes and stuff and has a great game. And of course, 4 days later on Saturday, he has a great game. He had like 2 catches and the 1 touchdown. The last play of the game. So it was a great game by Nick, but the last play of the game, I don't know, because I think it looked like he was getting double teamed on it. And again, I'm looking forward to rewatching this game on the TV. I feel like it's just because he had 2 guys on him down there, in man deep. And I feel like that's probably part of it. But I don't know. I'm honestly just, I'm not sure yet. And I'm sorry to have to say that. Just because I don't know. I think they were just looking to go deep to him again, but he couldn't. It just didn't seem like he tracked the ball that well. So the fumbles changed the momentum late in the game. Weren't we ahead before the big fumble? Yes. So South Carolina on the last fumble had a 5-point lead. And then they had the Odie Fortune interception in the end zone. There was still a lot of time left in the game in the fourth quarter. But it's like, if you don't fumble right there and you put together another 5-play drive or 5-minute drive, you might be in a position to where it's like Alabama's got to start using their timeouts, and you're deep in field goal range. You can just put it on ice with a field goal or even a touchdown. So people do forget that the 2 most important TDs were to a true freshman and a redshirt sophomore. Yeah, that's crazy. Mazio Bennett had the TD on I felt like what was a broken coverage by Alabama. And then, Nick Harbor had unless I'm missing someone. Nick's what? Just a sophomore now? He again, that catch was insane. Very good, and it was impressive to see. And Big Red also asks about, this is referring to the onside kick earlier. Was that a rugby-style kick? As Elijah said, it was a drop kick, and it was seriously Kai Kroger, major props. He's getting major props from me tomorrow on grading the Gamecocks. I don't know what I'm grading special teams yet, but if I had to grade him alone, that's an A+ kick. That's phenomenal right there, and very good by him. Big Red also asks, are we as fans looking for reasons outside of ourselves for why we lost in these games? I can't really speak to that because, again, I'm not sure how. I don't know, because if I'm looking at this as a fan perspective, again, I can't speak for everyone. I would say maybe I do feel like in both these losses that South Carolina's had, LSU and even Ole Miss, even despite getting blown out in that game, losing by 24 points, I should say. And then this game, you beat yourselves. If you don't have the penalties, you win that game against LSU. And if you take advantage of a 17-0 lead you had in that game, you win that game. And then the Ole Miss game, coaching decisions, just a lot of things went wrong in that game to where you beat yourselves right out of the gate. That was clearly obvious after the fake punt. And then this game, the fumbles and not being able to, stuff like that kind of set you back a little bit. So I don't know if everyone is looking for reasons outside, but I think I don't know. I do think for the most part, like, South Carolina's beating themselves in these games that they've lost. Let's see what else we got here. We got 2 more questions here from Big Red before we wrap up. You don't think the Bama game hurt our recruiting, do you? I don't think so. If anything, and this is kind of what I was going to say last week, because I think I got a similar question from someone about the recruiting. For this type of game, think about it this way with your recruit. Let's be in the recruit's shoes for a second. Put a recruiting hat on. If you're sitting there just watching South Carolina on TV and you're already getting recruited by them, it's like, and why wouldn't I want to go commit there? I can be that piece that helps them maybe beat Bama. Like maybe I can be that guy for them. That's how at least I think about it. So I don't think, if anything, that just showed that South Carolina can go out there and compete with anyone also, and that maybe they're just a few pieces away from being where they want to be, and they're doing a great job recruiting. And that's the real. I mean, look, when you're looking for positives in a game like this where you lost, which there were positives on the field, but off the field, I don't think recruiting was hurt at all after this game. If anything, it just showed that, like, hey, South Carolina is that close to beating a top 10 team in the country on the road in 2024. That is definitely appeasing, at least for me, just seeing that South Carolina is not that far off from beating a team like that. And the final question here from Big Red: could this year help us seriously, or help us get serious guys to transfer because they see our defense is legit? Absolutely. I mean, look, South Carolina is going to have to go out there and obviously compete against the big schools out there, like your Ohio States, your Oregons, literally any big school you could think of in this day and age of NIL and stuff, the schools that have the money and stuff. That's what South Carolina's going to go up against. It's not just about what your school can offer in terms of like campus life and scholarship and facilities. NIL also plays a really big deal into all of it. So I do think from what they see, like what transfers we'll see on the defense and what Clayton White brings to the table, absolutely. Like, who wouldn't want to be a part of this defense next year? Dylan Stewart's presumably going to be back here next year, as long as South Carolina can keep him. And then, they're still going to have Jalen Kilgore for another year. You'll have some other guys out there, David Busey, who made a really nice play on special teams yesterday on a kickoff, knocking the ball free against Alabama, and Alabama recovered. But it was a great play that really, if South Carolina recovers there, it's a difference-making play. But absolutely, like people see that game yesterday, and they're like, I would assume they're like, yeah, like that is crazy how close South Carolina was to winning that game. And Travis Edwards says, ask about huddling up, Jack, please. Yeah. Again, I'll look back at I had your comments starred, Travis. So I'll take a look on the Insiders Forum and see what you got. But definitely want to make sure we get the right questions asked to Shane tonight. Coming up in here in a little bit. And then obviously this week with coordinators, players, Beamer again on Tuesday. There's a lot to dissect about this game. And I have a lot of questions about, what did they see? Because it's like, especially with the 13 seconds left, throwing it deep. He had Larvadain open on the sideline. Throw to him. I'm not sure how many yards he gets. I have a good feeling he gets you pretty close to field goal range. And you probably have time to run one more play potentially if he's able to get out of bounds with like 6-7 seconds left. I'm not sure. And then Travis says, no defensive players improve the draft stock more than Kyle Kennard. That is important to transfers. Absolutely. And playing for a guy like Clayton White, it's not just a one-year thing. Go back to year one of this defense. That team was kind of just, look, they had a graduate assistant playing quarterback that year. And it was kind of just a random shot. Like, I don't even want to say random, but just, the first year is always hard because you're trying to keep guys, but you also lose some, and you kind of have to just rock with what you got. And that defense that year, I can't remember how they finished in terms of like, I think they were like tops, maybe like top of the SEC in takeaways. So it's been like this for a minute now. The defense in the last 4 games last year was really solid. And so it's been like this for a while. But it's really like everyone's really starting to say, like, oh, shoot, this defense is legit. So Clayton White is doing a fantastic job, and it's a real credit to him because he's got the players, he's got the guys around him to make it work, and he's doing a great job with this defense. And a lot of credit needs to be given to him for keeping South Carolina in ball games. And this is the last comment I'll talk about here. Carolina Titan says, with a consistent offense, this team can compete with anyone in college football this year. Absolutely. Look, the turnovers aside, I think South Carolina offensively showed a lot of improvement yesterday. You obviously like the sliding on, I think it was like second down or whatever early in the game when Sellers could have just ran for a first down. That's something you want to change probably. Some of the play calling early in the game for sure what you want to have back. But overall, like, they were much better on third down this game. They put together that 16 play, 80, I think it was an 85-yard drive, and it went like 8.5 minutes. The team has shown like there was improvement yesterday. Again, there are no moral victories. You lost the game. That's ultimately what people are going to look at most. But when you dive into the numbers and what you see back watching the tape, the offense got better as the game wore on. And I think that's a really exciting prospect to think about as we turn the page to the Oklahoma Sooners this week. So got a whole week of coverage coming up. We'll hear from Shane tonight, like I said, at 5 p.m. I'll have live updates on the Insiders Forum, and then I'll have some stories from that over the next few days, starting tonight here. Baseball scrimmage tonight, and then baseball scrimmages up until Wednesday, and then it's fall break for South Carolina. So I don't think they're going to be scrimmaging Thursday or Friday or anything. And then, we'll hear from the coordinators, players, Beamer again this week, and then I'll be back here on Wednesday. It'll be just me, no Kendall. She's out of town, but we'll be doing GC Live again, sharing our thoughts from coordinators and kind of going from there. And then heading to Oklahoma on Friday, and then the game on Saturday at 12:45 p.m. And that is going to be, I think, it's not a, I don't know if it's a gut check game for South Carolina, but it's kind of like I think you need to, it's a must win in my opinion. It's like you're catching Oklahoma right after they got blown out in the Red River rivalry game. And again, Texas is a great team. So not saying Oklahoma's a bad team, but South Carolina, if they play like they did yesterday, minus the mistakes they made, clean those up, cut them in half even, you probably should win that game. No excuse not to lose that game to Oklahoma. And if it helps anyone, I will provide a little bit of silver lining. And not that it will matter in a few weeks maybe, but I will say, so far this year, my overall season predictions for South Carolina, I've been on the money all 6 games. 3-3 is where I saw this team, coming at in the halfway point of the year. I do have them beating Oklahoma in my season prediction. So we'll see what happens. I do have them finishing 8-4. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Like so far through the halfway point of the year, knock on wood, things have been looking good in terms of, I guess I have the script for the season. So if things continue like they have been, South Carolina will go 8-4 this year. And it wouldn't shock me if they actually do, like in all seriousness, like this team, they are close. They are very close to, that's what we learned yesterday. The Ole Miss game, put that on the wayside now, move on to what's next. You played very well against a pretty good Alabama team, and you had them on the ropes, and you wish you had a few things back, but you can't take it back now. And you got to live and learn, move on, and get ready for a big matchup this week on the road in Norman. So that is going to do it for this very, very long episode of GC Live Sunday Reset. Again, want to thank you all that have been watching this entire time. Want to thank Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game for hopping on with me for well more time than he probably bargained for. But hey, that's the beauty of talking about a game with so many twists and turns. And look, you would think we'd be talking about a win with some of the things we're talking about here, but fortunately we are talking about a loss at the end of the day. But there is, the sun will come up. It did today, and it will tomorrow. And this team, it did, if anything, it did show they can bounce back and play a lot better after a really rough loss, even though they came up short, because they're that close, I think, in my opinion. Now just put it together for another week and be consistent. That's the main thing. So be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com for all live coverage, updates, stories, conversations on the message board. It's a great place to get involved on the Insiders Forum and talk Gamecock football, baseball, basketball, literally just about anything. And that'll do it for today's episode. Appreciate you guys all tuning in once again, and I will see you on Wednesday, and then I will see you guys next Sunday to recap and break down as best we can the Oklahoma game, and hopefully this time we're talking about a win. Take it easy, guys, and I'll see you guys again soon.